My hands were shaking as I held that letter from the lawyer's office. I was sitting on a plastic chair outside the Quick Mart on Jefferson Avenue, my 2 garbage bags of belongings at my feet, reading words that didn't make sense. $90 million. My brother Raymond had left me $90 million. I read it 3 times, then 4. The sun was beating down on my head, and my legs ached from standing all morning, trying to sell the few pieces of costume jewelry I had left. Just that morning, I'd been counting nickels and dimes, trying to figure out if I had enough for a can of soup. And now this letter was telling me I was a millionaire, 90 times over. But that's not even the craziest part of my story. The craziest part is that my own children, the babies I gave everything for, didn't even know I was homeless. They didn't know because they didn't care to know. They hadn't called in 8 months. 8 long months of me losing my apartment, sleeping in shelters, then on benches, then wherever I could find a safe corner. My name is Lorraine Coleman. I'm 72 years old, and this is the story of how my children threw me away like trash, and how I made them regret it. Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. Let me take you back to the beginning, so you understand how I got here. I was born in 1953 in a 2-room shack in rural Mississippi. My mama was a maid. My daddy picked cotton until his back gave out. We didn't have much, but we had love. When I was 19, I met Charles Coleman at a church revival. He was handsome, charming, and full of dreams. We got married quick, moved to Chicago for a better life, and I got pregnant right away. Terrence was born in 1975, and Brittany came along in 1978. Those were my babies, my whole world. Charles worked at the steel mill, and I cleaned houses during the day and took in ironing at night. We weren't rich, but we were making it. We had a small apartment in Englewood, went to Greater Hope Baptist Church every Sunday, and I cooked big Sunday dinners with greens, cornbread, and fried chicken. Our little family was happy. Then Charles died in 1985. A workplace accident. A beam fell wrong. He was just 33 years old. I was 32 with a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, and suddenly I was alone. I could have given up. Lord knows it would have been easier. But I looked at my babies' faces and knew I had to be strong. I took on 3 jobs. I cleaned offices from midnight to 6 in the morning. I worked the lunch shift at a diner from 11 to 3, and I braided hair in our living room on evenings and weekends. I slept maybe 4 hours a night. My hands got rough. My back started hurting all the time. I wore the same 3 outfits over and over because every penny went to my children. I made sure they had nice clothes for school. Not the newest, but clean and pressed. I made sure they had supplies, field trip money, anything they needed. I helped them with homework, even when I was so tired I could barely see straight. I taught them about hard work. I taught them about pride, about holding your head up no matter what. I taught them that education was the way out, the way to a better life than I had. And I taught them about Jesus, about treating people right, about never forgetting where you came from. They were good kids growing up. Terrence was quiet and serious, always had his nose in a book. Brittany was my helper, always wanting to make things better for everyone. They both made good grades. They both got scholarships, Terrence to Northwestern University for business, Brittany to the University of Illinois for social work. I was so proud the day Terrence graduated college. I wore my best church dress, the navy blue one with the pearl buttons that I'd had for 15 years. I'd saved for months to buy him a nice watch as a gift. I sat in that auditorium with tears running down my face, watching my son walk across that stage. My baby, the first Coleman to get a college degree. Brittany's graduation was 4 years later. By then, I was 60 years old and my body was wearing down. But I was there, crying happy tears again. That's when things started to change. Terrence got a job at a big marketing company downtown. He started wearing expensive suits and going to fancy restaurants. He met a woman named Ashley at work. She came from money. Her daddy was some kind of investment banker. They got engaged after 6 months. I was excited to meet her. Terrence brought her to my apartment one Sunday for dinner. I'd spent all day Saturday cooking, my special pot roast, macaroni and cheese, green beans with ham hocks, sweet potato pie. I'd cleaned every corner of my little place until it shined. Ashley walked in wearing high heels that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked around my apartment like she smelled something bad. She barely touched her food. She kept checking her phone. And when I showed her pictures of Terrence as a baby, she just smiled this tight little smile and said, "How quaint." After they left, Terrence called me. "Mama," he said, and his voice was different, cold. "Maybe it's better if we meet at restaurants from now on. Ashley's not really comfortable in that neighborhood." That hurt, but I told myself he was just trying to fit into his new life. I told myself it would get better. It got worse. Brittany graduated and got a job as a social worker on the South Side. I was proud. She was helping families, giving back. But she started dating this man, Kenneth, who had been raised in the suburbs. He'd never known struggle. When Brittany brought him to meet me, I could see him judging everything: my furniture, my neighborhood, me. Brittany started canceling our Sunday dinners. "We're so busy, Mama," she'd say. "I'll call you next week." But next week would come and go. Terrence got promoted to senior marketing director. He and Ashley bought a big house in Lake Forest, one of those suburbs where Black folks weren't even allowed to buy houses when I was young. They sent me a picture but didn't invite me to see it. When I asked when I could visit, Terrence hesitated. "Let us get settled first, Mama." 3 months passed, then 6. I called and called, but they were always busy. Terrence was traveling for work. Ashley was redecorating. They were hosting important dinners. There was always a reason. By then, I was 65 and I'd finally retired from cleaning. My Social Security check was small, only $800 a month, but I'd been managing. Until my landlord raised the rent by $300. Just like that, I couldn't afford my apartment anymore. I called Terrence. I didn't want to ask for money, but I was desperate. "Baby," I said, "I'm having trouble with my rent. Could you maybe help?" He cut me off. "Mama, Ashley and I just bought new furniture for the living room. We're stretched thin right now. Maybe Brittany can help?" I called Brittany. She sighed into the phone. "Mama, Kenneth and I are saving for our wedding. We can't take on extra expenses right now." That's when I realized I was on my own. I found a cheaper apartment in a rougher neighborhood, then an even cheaper one. But my health was failing. My diabetes was getting worse. My blood pressure was sky high. I couldn't work anymore, and my medications cost more than I could afford. I tried to call my children, but they stopped answering. I left messages. "Baby, I just want to hear your voice. Can we have Sunday dinner like we used to? I miss you." Nothing. Then came the day I'll never forget. I'd been evicted from my apartment because I couldn't pay. I had nowhere to go. I packed what I could carry into 2 garbage bags, and I took the train north to Lake Forest. I found Terrence's house. It was huge, with a circular driveway and perfect flower beds. I rang the doorbell with my bags at my feet. Ashley answered. Her face went white when she saw me. "Mrs. Coleman," she said, not opening the screen door. "This isn't a good time." "I just need to talk to Terrence," I said. "Please, baby." "I don't have anywhere to go." She glanced behind her nervously. "We're hosting a dinner party for Terrence's boss." That's when I heard his voice. "Ashley, who's at the—" Terrence appeared behind her. When he saw me, standing there in my worn coat with my garbage bags, his face changed. It wasn't love. It wasn't even pity. It was shame. "Mama," he said quietly, "you can't be here right now." "Baby, I got evicted. I just need—" "Not now." His voice was sharp, urgent. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and said words I'll hear in my head until the day I die. "You're an embarrassment. Look at you. Do you know what my boss will think if he sees you here?" I felt like he'd slapped me. This was the baby I'd held in my arms. The boy I'd worked 3 jobs for. The son I'd gone hungry for so he could eat. Terrence, please, go to Brittany's house. She can deal with this. He reached for his wallet, pulled out 2 $20 bills, and held them out to me through the screen door like I was a beggar. Take this. Get a motel room or something. Just don't come back here. He closed the door in my face. I stood there on his perfect porch with those $40 in my hand, and I cried. I cried for the first time in years. Then I picked up my bags and walked back to the train station. I went to Brittany's apartment on the south side. She lived in a nice building in Hyde Park. I buzzed her apartment. Mama? Her voice crackled through the intercom. What are you doing here? Brittany, baby, I need help. I got evicted and Terrence sent me here. Can I please come up? There was a long pause. So long I thought she'd left. Then, Mama, I can't. Kenneth's family is here meeting me for the first time. They're very conservative and I'm sorry. I can give you some money, but you can't stay here. She came down with $100 in cash. She wouldn't even look me in the eye. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'll call you next week. We'll figure something out. She never called. That was 8 months ago. 8 months of shelters, park benches, and kind strangers who gave me their leftovers. 8 months of my children not caring if I was alive or dead. And now this letter. This impossible, unbelievable letter about $90 million from a brother I hadn't seen in 40 years. I sat on that chair outside the Quick Mart, and something inside me changed. Something hard and cold settled in my chest where my heart used to be. My children had thrown me away. They'd been ashamed of the woman who'd sacrificed everything for them. They'd left me to die in the streets. Well, I wasn't going to die, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it. I folded that letter carefully, put it in my bag, and stood up. My legs didn't hurt anymore. I had a plan forming in my mind, a plan that would show my children exactly what they'd lost. A plan that would expose them for the selfish, heartless people they'd become. But first, I had to go to that lawyer's office. I had to make sure this money was real. And then, I was going to teach my children a lesson they'd never forget. The law office was in downtown Chicago, in one of those tall glass buildings I used to clean at night. Walking through those doors as a client instead of a cleaning lady felt strange. The receptionist looked at me, still in my worn clothes, carrying my garbage bags, like I was lost. "I'm here to see Mr. Gerald Patterson," I said, my voice steady. "He sent me a letter about my brother's estate." Her expression changed immediately. She picked up the phone, whispered something, and suddenly I was being escorted to a corner office with a view of the whole city. Mr. Patterson was a tall black man in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. He stood up when I walked in and shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Coleman, please, sit down. Can I get you some water? Coffee?" I hadn't had coffee in months. "Coffee would be nice, thank you." He buzzed his secretary, then sat across from me. "Mrs. Coleman, I'm sure my letter came as quite a shock." "That's putting it lightly," I said. "Mr. Patterson, I haven't seen my brother Raymond in over 40 years. Last I heard, he was living in Detroit, working at an auto plant. How did he get $90 million? Mr. Patterson smiled. "Your brother was a very smart man, Mrs. Coleman. He started investing in the 1980s, small amounts at first. He bought stock in a little computer company called Apple when nobody knew what it would become. He bought Amazon when it was just selling books. He lived simply, never married, kept reinvesting everything he made. By the time he passed away last month, his portfolio was worth $93 million. My hands were shaking. Why didn't he ever contact me? Why didn't he help me when... I stopped. I didn't want to cry in front of this lawyer, but Mr. Patterson's face was gentle. "He did try, Mrs. Coleman. About 5 years ago, he hired a private investigator to find you. The investigator reported back that you were living independently, that you had 2 successful children, and that you seemed to be doing well. Raymond didn't want to disrupt your life. He was a private man, a bit of a loner. But he never forgot about you." The coffee arrived, and I wrapped my hands around the warm cup. It had cream and sugar, just the way I liked it. "Raymond left very specific instructions," Mr. Patterson continued. He opened a folder and pulled out papers. "He left his entire estate to you, with one condition. He wanted me to investigate your circumstances before executing the will. Specifically, he wanted to know if your children were taking care of you." I looked up sharply. "What?" "Raymond grew up poor, just like you. He believed family was everything. He put a clause in his will stating that if your children had abandoned you or treated you poorly, they should inherit nothing. If they had taken care of you, he wanted you to be able to share the wealth with them as you saw fit." A laugh bubbled up in my throat. It was bitter, harsh. "Well, I guess that settles that." Mr. Patterson's expression was sympathetic. "Mrs. Coleman, I need you to understand something. When my investigator looked into your situation last week, when we tracked you down to serve this notice, we discovered you've been homeless for months. We found records of shelter stays. We spoke to people who'd seen you sleeping on benches. And we confirmed that your children, both of whom are financially comfortable, haven't had contact with you in over 8 months." Tears were rolling down my face now. I couldn't stop them. "They threw me away," I whispered. "I gave them everything and they threw me away like garbage." Mr. Patterson handed me a tissue. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Coleman. Truly. But Raymond anticipated this possibility. He was very clear in his instructions. Your children inherit nothing. The money is yours, to do with as you wish." I wiped my eyes. "When can I access it?" "We can start the paperwork today. I'll need proper identification, but we can work with what you have. Within a week, you'll have full access to the estate." A week. 7 days. I sat there thinking, my mind racing. What would I do with $90 million? Buy a big house? New clothes? Travel the world? No, that wasn't enough. Money wasn't enough. I wanted my children to feel what they'd made me feel. I wanted them to understand what they'd lost. I wanted them to know shame and regret so deep it would haunt them forever. "Mr. Patterson," I said slowly, "I have an idea, but I'm going to need your help." He leaned forward. "I'm listening." "My children don't know about this money. They don't know Raymond existed. They definitely don't know he was rich." I took a breath. "What if we stage my death? Make them think I died homeless and alone. Then, at the will reading, we reveal the inheritance. And we reveal that they're getting nothing because of how they treated me." Mr. Patterson's eyebrows went up. "That's quite dramatic." "They deserve dramatic," I said firmly. "They need to see what they did. They need to face it publicly with witnesses. Can you help me?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile. "Mrs. Coleman, I've been a lawyer for 30 years. I've seen a lot of families destroy each other over money, but I've rarely seen someone want justice more than revenge. Yes, I'll help you." Over the next hour, we planned it out. Mr. Patterson would arrange for a small studio apartment where I could stay while we set everything up. He'd advance me enough money for food, clothes, and necessities. Meanwhile, he'd hire an actor to play a homeless shelter worker who would call my children with news of my death. "We'll say you died of a heart attack," Mr. Patterson explained. "That you'd been asking for them at the end. Make them feel guilty, if they're capable of feeling guilt." "They used to be," I said sadly, "when they were children." The next few days were a blur. Mr. Patterson got me set up in a clean, furnished apartment in Bronzeville. It had a real bed, a kitchen, a bathroom with hot water. That first night, I stood in the shower and cried until the water ran cold. I went shopping for the first time in months, real shopping, not digging through donation bins. I bought simple clothes, nothing fancy. I bought groceries and cooked myself a real meal. I took my medications properly for the first time in weeks. And I waited. On Thursday morning, Mr. Patterson called. "It's done. The shelter worker called both of your children this morning. He told them you'd been staying there for a few weeks, that you died peacefully in your sleep last night. He said you'd been asking for them. What did they say? Your son Terrence asked which funeral home was handling arrangements. Your daughter Brittany cried on the phone. They're both planning to attend the funeral. The funeral. Mr. Patterson had arranged everything. There would be a viewing at Morrison's funeral home on Saturday, followed by a memorial service at a small chapel. Then, on Monday, there would be a will reading at his office. We've prepared a closed casket, he said. We'll say you requested it. Don't worry, everything will look legitimate. I spent Friday at Mr. Patterson's office, signing papers and finalizing my real will. He'd recommended I meet with a financial advisor, and together we'd come up with a plan. I wasn't going to be selfish with this money. I was going to do something good, something that would honor the woman I used to be before my children broke my heart. Saturday morning arrived. I put on a simple black dress I'd bought and a pair of dark sunglasses. Mr. Patterson picked me up in his car. Are you ready for this? He asked. I've been ready since my son called me an embarrassment, I said. The funeral home was small and elegant. Mr. Patterson had arranged for a few people to attend, some actors playing shelter residents and volunteers, to make it look real. And he'd invited Mrs. Gladys Washington, my neighbor from my last apartment building. Gladys was the only person who'd shown me real kindness during those dark months. She'd given me food, let me use her bathroom to wash up, never judged me. She was 75 years old, blind in one eye, and had the biggest heart of anyone I'd ever known. Mr. Patterson had filled her in on the plan, and she was furious on my behalf. Those ungrateful children, she'd said when he told her. Leaving their mama to suffer like that. They need to learn. I watched from a side room through a one-way mirror as people arrived. First came Brittany and Kenneth. Brittany was wearing a black designer dress and crying behind her sunglasses. Kenneth looked uncomfortable, checking his watch. Then Terrence and Ashley arrived. Terrence was stone-faced, wearing an expensive black suit. Ashley clung to his arm, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. They all approached the closed casket. Brittany broke down crying. "I'm sorry, Mama," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry." Terrence put his hand on the casket. His jaw was tight. But here's what got me. Here's what made my blood boil. After a few minutes of standing there, Ashley leaned over to Terrence and whispered something. He nodded. Then they both stepped away from the casket and started looking around the funeral home like they were assessing the value of the furniture. The service was short. A minister, Mr. Patterson, had hired, said some generic words about eternal rest. Brittany cried loudly. A few of the actors shared fake stories about how kind I was at the shelter. Terrence gave a eulogy. He stood at the podium and talked about what a strong woman I was, how I'd worked hard to give them a good life, how much he'd loved me. He even cried, real tears running down his face. I wanted to burst out of that side room and scream at him. "You didn't love me! You threw me away!" But I stayed hidden, my fists clenched, waiting. After the service, I watched my children through the mirror. They stood together near the exit, talking quietly. "I feel terrible," Brittany said, her voice shaking. "We should have been there for her." "She was always so independent," Terrence said. "How were we supposed to know she needed help?" I almost laughed. I'd called them. I'd shown up at their doors. They knew. "Do you think she had any assets?" Ashley asked. Her voice was calculating. "Maybe a life insurance policy?" Terrence shrugged. "She was on Social Security. I doubt it. We'll find out Monday at the will reading." Ashley's expression changed, brightened. "There's a will reading?" "The lawyer said so," Brittany confirmed. "Monday at 10. I can't imagine she had much, but we should go." They had no idea at all. Monday morning, I woke up early. Today was the day. Today, they'd learn what they'd lost. I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit Mr. Patterson had helped me pick out. Pearl earrings, low heels. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. I looked dignified, strong, rich. The law office conference room was set up like a small theater. Mr. Patterson sat at the head of the table. Gladys sat in one corner, wearing her Sunday best and grinning like she was at the movies. We'd set up cameras to record everything. I wanted proof of what was about to happen. I waited in Mr. Patterson's office, watching through another one-way mirror. Terrence and Ashley arrived first, both dressed like they were attending a board meeting. Then Brittany and Kenneth. They all sat down, looking uncomfortable. "Thank you for coming," Mr. Patterson began. "I'm Gerald Patterson, and I was the attorney for both Mrs. Lorraine Coleman and her brother, Raymond Coleman." Brittany's head snapped up. "Brother? Mama had a brother?" "She did," Mr. Patterson said smoothly. "Raymond Coleman passed away last month. He left his entire estate to his sister, your mother, and she, in turn, left a will of her own." Terrence leaned forward. "How much are we talking about?" Mr. Patterson opened a folder. "Raymond Coleman's estate was valued at $93 million. The room went silent. Completely, utterly silent. Ashley's mouth fell open. Brittany gasped. Kenneth's eyes went wide. Terrence found his voice first. 90 million? "Yes," Mr. Patterson said. "And your mother inherited all of it approximately 2 weeks before her death." I watched Terrence's face transform. First shock, then calculation, then excitement. I could see him doing the math. 90 million divided by 2 children. "So," Terrence said slowly, "Brittany and I are splitting $90 million? Mr. Patterson's face went cold. "No." "What do you mean, no?" Ashley demanded. "We're her children. Who else would inherit?" Mr. Patterson pulled out another document. "Your mother's will was very specific. Let me read the relevant portion." He cleared his throat. "To my son Terrence and my daughter Brittany, I leave nothing. You abandoned me when I needed you most. You were ashamed of me. You threw me away. You do not deserve this money, and you will not receive a penny of it." The color drained from Terrence's face. "That's not legal. We can contest that." "You can try," Mr. Patterson said. "But your mother was of sound mind when she made this will. It was properly witnessed, and her reasons for disinheritance are well documented. You left her homeless despite both of you being financially comfortable. You refused to help when she came to you. Terrence, you called her an embarrassment and gave her $40 to go away." Terrence stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "How do you know that? Who told you?" "Your mother told me," Mr. Patterson said. "Before she died." Brittany was crying now. "Where did the money go? Who did she leave it to?" "The bulk of the estate, $80 million, goes to Mrs. Gladys Washington." Mr. Patterson gestured to Gladys, who waved cheerfully. "Mrs. Washington was your mother's neighbor and the only person who showed her kindness in her final months. The remaining $13 million has been placed in trust funds for any grandchildren. To be accessed when they turn 25, the funds are managed by independent trustees and neither of you have any control over them." "This is ridiculous!" Ashley shrieked. "She was clearly mentally ill, living on the streets, making crazy decisions." "Watch your mouth," Gladys said sharply. "Lorraine Coleman was one of the smartest, strongest women I ever knew." "We're going to sue," Terrence said. His voice was shaking with rage. "We're going to fight this." "Good luck with that," a voice said from the doorway. Everyone turned. I stood there, very much alive, very much well-dressed, and very much done with my ungrateful children. Brittany screamed. Ashley grabbed Terrence's arm. Kenneth stumbled backward. "Hello, babies," I said, walking into the room. "Surprised to see me?" Terrence's face went from white to red to purple. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Ashley let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a whimper. Brittany just stared at me, tears frozen on her cheeks. But you're dead," Brittany whispered. "We went to your funeral. We saw the casket." You saw a closed casket, I corrected, walking to the conference table and sitting down like I owned the place. Because in a way, I did. You saw what I wanted you to see. This is fraud, Terrence exploded. Faking your death is illegal. We can have you arrested. Mr. Patterson chuckled. Actually, Mr. Coleman, faking one's death isn't illegal in Illinois. It's certainly unethical, but not criminal. And your mother had very good reasons for her deception. You, Terrence pointed at me, his hand shaking. You manipulated us. You tricked us into coming here. I tricked you? My voice came out hard as steel. Baby, you don't know the meaning of the word trick. Let me tell you about manipulation. Manipulation is working 3 jobs to put your children through school, then having them shut the door in your face. Manipulation is calling your children for 8 months and having them ignore you while you sleep on park benches. We didn't know you were homeless, Brittany cried. How were we supposed to know? I turned to her slowly. You knew I got evicted. I told you. I came to both of you for help, and you turned me away. You knew, baby. You just didn't care to know more. Kenneth cleared his throat. Mrs. Coleman, surely you can understand that young people have their own lives, their own financial pressures. Don't you dare, Gladys interrupted, her voice sharp. I'm 75 years old, living on a fixed income, and I found ways to help Lorraine. I gave her food, I let her use my bathroom. I treated her like a human being. These two, she pointed at Terrence and Brittany, make 6 figures each and couldn't spare a room or even regular phone call for the woman who birthed them. Ashley stood up. We don't have to listen to this. Terrence, let's go. We'll call our lawyers. Sit down, I said quietly. I'm not finished. Something in my voice made her sit. Maybe it was the authority of $90 million. Maybe it was the fact that I was no longer the tired, broken woman they'd rejected. Let me tell you what's going to happen, I continued. That will reading was real. Gladys is getting $80 million, and she's earned every penny. The rest is in trust for your children, children you don't even have yet. And you two? I looked at Terrence and Brittany. You get nothing but the shame of knowing you abandoned your mother for no reason. For no reason? Terrence's voice cracked. You showed up at my house looking like what? Like a homeless person? I was a homeless person, Terrence, because of you and your sister. That's not fair, Brittany sobbed. We had our own bills, our own lives. I had 3 jobs when you were growing up, I shouted, standing up. All the pain, all the anger, all the hurt from those 8 months came pouring out. 3 jobs. I slept 4 hours a night so you could have school supplies and field trip money and birthday parties. I wore the same 3 outfits for years so you could have new clothes. I went hungry so you could eat. The room was silent except for Brittany's crying. I never asked you for much, I continued, my voice breaking. I never asked you to support me. I just wanted you to love me, to call me, to let me be part of your lives. But I was an embarrassment. I wasn't good enough for your fancy friends and your big houses. Terrence's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I used to tuck into bed. Mama, don't. I held up my hand. Don't you dare call me Mama now. You lost that right when you handed me $40 and told me not to come back. I turned to Mr. Patterson. Is there anything else we need to cover? Just one more thing, he said, pulling out another document. Mrs. Coleman has asked me to inform you that she's made arrangements for your access to family medical history and information, should you need it for your future children. She's not heartless, even if you were. But beyond that, she has no desire to maintain contact with either of you. What? Brittany stood up, panicked. Mama, you can't mean that. We're family! Family, I repeated bitterly. Where was family when I was sleeping on benches? Where was family when I was eating out of garbage cans? Where was family when I was so sick I thought I might die on the street? We're sorry. Brittany was sobbing now, big, heaving sobs. We're so sorry. Please, Mama, please forgive us. I looked at her. really looked at her. Part of me wanted to forgive her. Part of me remembered the sweet little girl who used to help me braid hair, who used to sing with me in church. But then I remembered her face through that intercom, telling me I couldn't come up because Kenneth's family was there. "Maybe one day I'll forgive you," I said softly, "but I'll never forget, and I don't want you in my life anymore. You made your choice." Terrence just stared at the table. He hadn't said anything in minutes. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. "What are you going to do with the money?" I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd felt in months. "I'm going to do something good, something that matters." That's all I told them. Then I walked out of that conference room with my head held high, Gladys on one arm and Mr. Patterson on the other. 3 weeks later, I stood in front of the biggest, most run-down mansion I'd ever seen. It was in Englewood, not far from where I'd raised my children. The house had been beautiful once, a 3-story Victorian with turrets and stained glass windows. But it had been abandoned for years, and now it was a shell. "You sure about this?" Gladys asked. She'd insisted on coming with me, even though I'd given her $80 million. "We could buy something nicer." "This is perfect," I said. "It just needs love." I'd used $15 million to buy the property and fund renovations. Mr. Patterson connected me with architects, contractors, and social workers. Over the next 6 months, we transformed that broken mansion into something beautiful. We created Coleman House, a home for foster children and homeless youth. 30 bedrooms, each one bright and cheerful. A huge kitchen where I could cook big meals. A library. A computer room. A gymnasium in the basement. A garden in the back where kids could grow vegetables. The grand opening was on a Sunday in June. Pastor Michaels from Greater Hope Baptist Church came to bless the house. So did Gladys, Mr. Patterson, and about 50 people from the community. Local news came and did a story. But the best part was the kids. That first week, we welcomed 8 children, kids who'd been aging out of foster care, teenagers who'd been living on the streets, young people who just needed someone to believe in them. There was Destiny, a 17-year-old girl who'd been sleeping in her car after her foster home kicked her out. There was Marcus, a 15-year-old boy who'd run away from an abusive situation. There was twin sisters, Aaliyah and Amara, who'd lost their parents and had no family to take them in. I gave them clean beds, good food, and something they'd never had: stability. I hired counselors, tutors, and life skills coaches. I made sure they had what they needed for school. And every Sunday, I cooked a big dinner: greens, cornbread, fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, sweet potato pie, just like I used to make for my own children. These kids called me Miss Lorraine. Some of the younger ones started calling me Grandma. And you know what? I let them, because they needed a grandmother, and I needed a family. Gladys moved into Coleman House, too. She took over one of the first-floor bedrooms and became the house grandmother. She taught the girls how to sew and told everyone stories about the old days. The kids loved her. At night, I'd walk through the halls and hear laughter coming from the bedrooms. I'd see kids doing homework at the dining room table, helping each other with math problems. I'd watch them play basketball in the gym or tend the garden. And I'd feel something I hadn't felt in years: peace. One evening, about a year after Coleman House opened, I was in the kitchen making dinner when Destiny came in. She was 18 now, getting ready to start at community college. "Miss Lorraine," she said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby." "Why did you do this? I mean, you could have bought anything with that money. Traveled the world, lived in a mansion by yourself. Why did you turn it into a home for kids like us?" I put down the spoon I was holding and looked at her. Really looked at her. She reminded me so much of Brittany at that age. Bright eyes, hopeful smile, whole life ahead of her. "Because you all deserved better than what you got," I said. "Just like I deserved better than what my children gave me. I couldn't change what happened to me, but I could make sure other people's stories ended differently." Destiny hugged me tight. "You saved my life," she whispered. "No, baby," I said, hugging her back. "You all saved mine." I still had $65 million left after buying and renovating Coleman House and setting up its operational trust fund. I used some of it to establish scholarships for the kids. Every child who came through our doors would have college fully funded if they wanted it. I donated to other shelters and organizations helping homeless families. I set up a foundation that would keep Coleman House running long after I was gone. And I lived, really lived, not in luxury, but in purpose. Every day I woke up knowing I was making a difference. Every night I went to bed surrounded by love. Did I think about Terrence and Brittany? Sometimes, usually late at night when the house was quiet. I wondered if they thought about me, if they regretted what they'd done, if they'd learned anything. About 6 months after the will reading, I got a letter. It was from Brittany. "Dear Mama," it started. "I know you said you don't want contact with us, but I need you to know something. Kenneth and I broke up. When he found out about the money, about what I'd done to you, he said he couldn't marry someone who'd treat their mother that way. He was right. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for what I did. I see homeless people now, and I think about you. I volunteer at a shelter twice a week. It doesn't make up for anything, but it's something. I hope you're happy, wherever you are. I hope you've found peace. I love you, even though I have no right to say that anymore. Brittany." I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer. Maybe one day I'd respond. Maybe one day I'd be ready to let her back into my life. Even just a little, but not yet. The wound was still too fresh. I never heard from Terrence. I heard through the grapevine that he and Ashley had divorced, that he'd left the marketing firm and moved to Atlanta for a fresh start. I hoped he'd become a better person. I hoped he'd learned that money and status weren't everything. But mostly, I didn't think about them. I thought about Marcus acing his SATs, about Destiny getting accepted to nursing school, about Aaliyah and Amara teaching the younger kids how to braid hair, about Gladys telling the story of how I'd risen from the dead for the 100th time, making everyone laugh. I thought about the family I'd built from scratch, a family that chose me as much as I chose them. On Sunday evenings, we'd all gather in the big dining room for dinner. Sometimes we'd have 30 kids, sometimes 40. I'd stand at the head of the table, looking at all those young faces, and I'd feel my heart swell up so big I thought it might burst. "Before we eat," I'd say, "let's hold hands and give thanks." And we'd hold hands, all of us, every color, every background, every story. And we'd thank God for food, for shelter, for family, for second chances. I was 73 years old, and I'd lost everything: my apartment, my health, my children. But I'd gained something more valuable than $90 million. I'd gained purpose. I'd gained love. I'd gained a family that actually wanted me. My children had abandoned me because they were ashamed of who I was. But these kids loved me for exactly who I was. A tough old lady who'd survived the streets and came out stronger. A woman who'd turned pain into purpose. That was my revenge, I realized. Not the money, not the public humiliation at the will reading, not even the fact that they'd lost millions because of their cruelty. My revenge was being happy without them. My revenge was building something beautiful from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. My revenge was proving that I didn't need them, that I'd never needed them. I was Lorraine Coleman, and I was free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.